This is a podcast about one woman's mission to help entrepreneurs and business owners write better business books. Each week, we tackle your writing excuses, because there are excuses too, and help you beat the blank page of doom so that you can write the book that'll grow your life and your business. Now here's your host, Vicky Fraser.
Hello and welcome to the 1000 Authors Show. I'm Vicky Quinn Fraser and I'm your host this evening. Sadly, Joe is not with us this evening. He is taking part in Struggle Cuddles, aka Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and I realised that we hadn't made a podcast this week, so here I am. I'm afraid you're stuck with me. And just before we start, a little bit of housekeeping. The name of the podcast is going to be changing to Notes in the Margin to reflect my newsletter. Nothing else will change. The podcast will still be in the same place. You'll still access it in the same way. But yeah, just wanted to let you know, give you a couple of episodes heads up that is what will be happening as soon as we get around to recording the new intro and outro, I guess. So anyway, this week I wanted to share a bunch of books that I have been reading recently. Actually, 10 books that I've read recently. Because I realised that I've never really done this. I've never really done like a little kind of lightning round book review episode. And the reason I wanted to do this is because I'm not going to be sharing writing books. I'm not going to be sharing books about writing, because I've done that before. I've talked to, there are lots of podcasts, lots of episodes that will talk about writing books. You know, we've got Bird by Anne Lamott. We've got all sorts of books by Joanna Penn and people like that. They're great books, read them. But I wanted to talk about just reading widely and reading lots. Because if you want to be a good writer, the absolute first rule is read. Read a lot, read widely, read all over the place, read stuff that you wouldn't normally pick up and read. Really important. Every now and then, I will have a conversation with someone who says, I'd really like to write a book. And I'm like, okay, cool. So what kind of books do you like? And I'll be like, oh, no, I don't read. Dude, no. If you want to write a book, if you want to write a good book that people are actually going to want to read, you've got to read. And whether that is paper books, Kindle books, audiobooks, magazines, whatever, you have to read books and you have to read widely. And read by people who don't look like you, people who don't sound like you, people who don't live their lives like you. This is really, really important, because the more writing you can read by people who are different from you, the more tools you're going to be able to have yourself with your own writing to write really well. So, that in mind, I'm just going to run through a list of books that I have read and loved recently. I'm going to ignore the ones that I've abandoned. Might do something on that another day. But just for now, I'm going to start with, and this is in no particular order at all, the first is The Dictionary of Lost Words by Pip Williams, and I have Sarah Silver to thank for this. Hi, Sarah, because she finished this book and then posted it to me thinking that I would really enjoy it, and she was right, I did. I absolutely loved it. It's so great. It's a fictionalised account of the creation and editing of the Oxford English Dictionary. So it's set in the late 1800s, early 1900s, right up to kind of World War One, really, and a little bit beyond. It's absolutely fantastic. There's a lot of truth in it. So the guy who edited the dictionary, James Murray, he was a real person. A lot of the characters in the book are real people, but the protagonist, the main character, is not a real person. She's a fictionalized person, and it's just fantastic. It's a wonderful account of the dictionary from her point of view, from a woman's point of view. And the whole point of it is this dictionary of lost words. The only words that were included in the dictionary were ones that were written down, and they were mostly, back then, words written down by men. And it just excluded a whole section, more than one section of language, actually. Language of poor people, the language of immigrants, and the language of women, quite often which weren't written down. So this is a book about her process of kind of collecting these lost words, and it's just wonderful, and the story is wonderful as well. I cried a lot. So thoroughly recommend that, especially if you are an absolute word nerd like myself. Second book that I would like to recommend is an essay collection called Please Don't Sit on My Bed in Your Outside Clothes by Phoebe Robinson. Now, I love this. The thing that caught my attention with this was the title, because I, like Phoebe Robinson, have a bit of a thing about dirt and dirty clothes, and don't come into my home with your shoes on. Like, I mean, we're renovating at the moment, but as soon as our house is finished renovation, I'm going to provide slippers for people, because no, you're not treading the dirty outside into my house. And yeah, and also absolutely do not sit on my bed in your outside clothes. I was really funny about this as a teenager as well, as I recall. So, but that was what got my attention. Anyway, but this is so she wrote this book during, I think she started writing it during or just after lockdown, and it was all about, it's really the focus of it, the theme of it is her life with her partner, or British Bake Off as she calls him, British Bay, as the kids say. And Phoebe Robinson is a black lady and her British Bay is a white man. And so it's about their life together. It's not about race, but obviously that comes into it. It's really funny, really funny. It's her life lessons, not just about like living, like being thrown into a very close relationship with somebody. I don't think they were living together before lockdown happened, and then we're obviously locked down together, and so that happened. It's also about her business, how she started her business, how she her relationships with her parents and with her friends, and it's just very, very funny and really wise, and I love it so much. She is Dope Queen Phoebes on Instagram. I recommend that you follow her there as well. She's funny, so love that. I also love her writing style. She's a super writer. So third book is, and this is a creativity book. So a book on creativity by a guy called Austin Kleon, and it's called Show Your Work. It comes in a very bright yellow cover. It's a square, like physically a square book, and I love it. It's simple, and I don't mean any shade when I say that. It's simple in that it's just his 10 lessons on why and how we can show our work. And his previous book is Steal Like an Artist, which you've probably heard of. And that is all about, that's where creativity comes from. We take stuff and we adapt it. And this is all about how we can share stuff so that other people can take it and adapt it, and how we find our audiences, how we find our readers. Really great, really entertaining, really wise, really short and easy to read, and physically a beautiful little book as well. Also recommend that you get on his email list. He's got a Substack email that I think he emails once a week with really cool creativity stuff. Follow him on Instagram also for delightful notebook sharings, and yeah, enjoy. Number 4, the next book that I would like to share is another essay collection. Actually, it's not essays, it's a collection of short stories by Deesha Philyaw, and it's The Secret Lives of Church Ladies, and it's so great. I read it in 4 days, cover to cover. Absolutely loved it. I think it's like 7 or 8, maybe a couple more short stories, all about women of the church in America, in the black churches usually, and it's just great. It's funny, it's moving, it's tragic, it's shocking, and it's delightful. It's just delightful. I love the writing style. I love the storytelling. It left me wanting much, much more. I want many, 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 many more of these stories, The Secret Lives of Church Ladies. It came in my Books That Matter box. Absolutely adored it. 100% recommend, 10 out of 10. Go grab a copy. Next book that I loved and have read recently is Furiously Happy by Jenny Lawson. I know I've mentioned this before on the podcast, because Jenny Lawson is also known as the Bloggess. I've been following her since I think the beginning of the internet, like late 90s, when I followed her blog, hence her name, the Bloggess. I'd read her previous memoir, and this one is brilliant. It's a funny story about horrible things, a funny book about horrible things. It's all about her many mental health issues and weirdnesses and oddnesses, and it's just hysterically funny and moving and shocking and sad and wonderful, and I can't recommend it highly enough. Purely for the storytelling and the hilarity and the anecdotes, but also for the honesty and the warmth and openness with which she writes. She doesn't hold, you can tell that she's not holding anything back, really. She is spreading all of her weird out for us, generously for us to enjoy. And it's also just wonderful to know that other people are out there struggling with shit too, I mean, we know that in an abstract way, but representation matters in all fields. And this is another reason, by the way, why need to diversify our bookshelves in all ways, not just in terms of race and gender of writers, but also in terms of mental health and the sexual orientation and all of that kind of thing as well, because representation matters. And the more we read those books, the more of those books will be in demand and will be produced, and that's only a good thing. So Jenny Lawson's Furiously Happy is hilarious and wonderful, and I also recommend that you follow her on Instagram and anywhere else you can find her. She is great. Book number 6 An Idler's Manual by Tom Hodgkinson. Now, I first heard Tom Hodgkinson on the Slightly Foxed podcast, where he was being interviewed, and I was like, what on earth is The Idler? I'd never heard of it. It's a magazine that's been around for a long time. Apparently it's quite well known. I did not know. I was never really a magazine person until the last couple of years, until lockdown really. And so I subscribed to the Idler magazine, and as a gift for subscribing, they sent me the Idler's Manual by Tom Hodgkinson, who is the editor of said magazine and founder. And it's just really great. It's just basically a loafing handbook. It's like how to be idle and why and what to do. And it's just, extolling the virtues of not doing so much. It's a pushback against Western capitalism and overproductivity and just perpetual grind and misery to put money in somebody else's pockets, So, and he's all about the simple life and how can we do less and live more. And I just love that idea. And the Idler's Manual is perfect. Again, simple and fairly short and just delightful. Book number 7 that I would like to recommend, My Mess is a Bit of a Life by Georgia Pritchett. Again, I've mentioned this on the podcast before. It's a memoir in really short chunks, and I love it. Again, it's not really chapters, it's little short chunks, but it is all woven together in a thread that takes you through her life. About her extreme anxiety. She has really quite crippling at times anxiety. But it's also hilarious and shocking and sad and just wonderful. I love everything about it. I love her writing style. It had me laughing out loud and it had me crying. And I just like the way it's put together as well. It's like she didn't feel any need to put it into a big kind of chunky chapters and have it, have this big narrative woven through. She chose to do it in short, sharp, snippets of her life. And it worked really well because it kind of gives you, all the way through, it gives you this feeling of bubbling anxiety, not in an uncomfortable way. It's not uncomfortable to read, but it just gives you that feeling of, that she chose this format deliberately because her life hasn't been one long, smooth story. It's been bits and pieces and chunks, and she's all of it. I don't think anybody's life is really one long smooth story, but hers just comes across that her life has been a mess, as she says, and it's just wonderful. So thoroughly recommend that. Book I've almost finished, still reading, Good Pop, Bad Pop by Jarvis Cocker. Absolutely cracking memoir by one of my favourite musicians. Pulp were one of my favourite bands as a teenager. Love Jarvis, love his radio show on BBC Six Music. It's not there anymore, but he's just great. He's really smart, he's funny, he's insightful. And this book I loved because, again, what an idea. He was cleaning out his loft and he decided to write a memoir based on all of the crap that he's pulling out of his loft. He's keeping some stuff, he's cobbing, it's a northern word for chucking, cobbing other stuff, and he's telling the story behind each item that he has chosen for the memoir. And I love it because it's also a memoir on creativity and how pulp came about and how he gets his ideas and how he gets his look and all of that. It's all about his creativity and his creative process, and I love it. It's such a treat. Book number 9, absolutely glorious book. I know this is a classic. I had only come to it in the last couple of years. I can't remember when I read it, a year or so ago. Their Eyes Were Watching God by Zora Neale Hurston. It's absolutely beautiful book. It's a coming of age story about a woman in the deep south, still in the right at the height of Jim Crow. Segregation was still going on. The protagonist's name is Janie, and we follow her through her youngest years into becoming a teenager, her sexual awakening, her husbands, plural, what happened to them, what happened to her, the abuse she suffered, and the fact that she never ever gave up or got beaten down or anything. She was always just this incredible force of nature who was determined to be who she is in the face of literally everything that didn't want her to be who she was, which was, white people, society generally, the men in her life, her grandma who had her best interests at heart but worried about her. So it's a wonderful, wonderful book. And again, it was amazing. I loved it. And finally, on the list is Slouching Towards Bethlehem by Joan Didion. Another book of essays, non-fiction essays, by one of the best essayists in the world ever, I would think. Joan Didion's writing was amazing. She died, I think, early this year, and which is totally shit. So we've lost one of the best writers of our generation, I think. But Slouching Towards Bethlehem is amazing. It's she has this way of looking at the world and interpreting the world and then sharing the world with her reader that is unparalleled and unique and wonderful. She is so insightful, so thoughtful. Just love how she observes the world and then shares it with people. So that is 10 books that I thoroughly recommend that you read. Yes, read books about writing, but read more books that aren't about writing. Read more books that are just books. Read fiction, read non-fiction, read essays, read stuff that you wouldn't normally pick up. Join a book club and read stuff that you wouldn't normally pick up. Take people's recommendations. Look outside the realms of genres that you would normally... I used to be very much, fantasy, sci-fi was my thing. I have made the effort to step outside of that, and my God, has it paid off. It's just been wonderful. So yeah. This is your 10 book suggestions for the next month or so, I guess. And when I remember, I'll come back and do another lot. So takeaway for this week: if you want to be a good writer, read lots and read widely, and read fiction and non-fiction, and not just books about how to write. And write. Take those things that you learn. If you see a lovely turn of phrase in a book, I've always got a notebook next to me. If there's a paragraph or a passage that just moves me, I copy it down. And then I note where it's from. And then I come back to it if I'm like, how do I want to say this thing? How did this person write it? And maybe I can take some of those techniques and adapt them for myself. So coming up next week, Jo will be back because we're going to record this before the weekend, for sure. Next week, we will be talking about the writing tools and software that I use, because I thought it might be useful to just list a few things out. And you can try them and see if they work for you too. In the meantime, though, if you want to get started on your book and you're maybe feeling stuck, or you're like, I don't know where to start, I have obviously my book, which is How the Hell Do You Write a Book, which you can get at moxiebooks.co.uk/buy-the-book. And then for more practical help, you can get my book writing templates. I really recommend them. They are not templates in the sense that they're going to make you write a formulaic blueprint book. They are templates in the sense that they are going to nudge you to think really deeply about your book, and then get you writing about it from there. I haven't seen anything quite like these before. I think they're great. I know I'm biased, but other people think they're great as well. So you can get those from moxiebooks.co.uk/start-your-book-templates. The link is in the show notes. If you've listened to every episode, email me and I will send you a special gift. If you like this podcast, go and subscribe at iTunes or wherever you get your podcast from. It helps us to reach more people. And please leave us a review. If you could leave us a review on iTunes, that would be amazing. It will help more people to find us. The best thing you can do is, if you know somebody who will enjoy this podcast, please send them a link, moxiebooks.co.uk/podcast. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you to Podfly, as always, for making this sound fabulous. Thank you to Harriet, my beautiful assistant, for being wonderful. And thank you to you, dear listener, for listening to this podcast. I will be back same time next week. Goodbye.
Thanks for listening. You can find links and show notes on the website at moxiebooks.co.uk/podcast, where you can also sign up for the best daily emails in the multiverse and find loads of free resources to help you write your book. We'll be back the same time next week with more tales from the book writing trenches and the latest on what the tiny sheeps have been up to.